Good morning. I'm Janet Pasco, and I am the market president of Horizon Bank in this region. And together with my friends over here, we've been putting this presentation together for the last few months. As you guys know, our topic is family business, family life, plan, protect, preserve. So I'm going to introduce all of them in a second. I'm going to read a quote to you guys first. It's not how much money you make, but how much you keep, how hard it works for you, and how many generations you keep it for. That is kind of our goal today, is to get you to think in those terms. Also, somebody else told me, and I think it might have been Rob, if you don't handle your estate planning now, you're setting up your heirs to fight with each other after you're gone. And I think that is very true. And I've seen that as a commercial lender. I've seen that when a family member passes away and they don't have their affairs in order. It can be very messy. Better to have those tough conversations now while you have the opportunity. I'll just tell you one story from my personal experience to wet your whistle. A while back, I was banking a family business. It was owned by two brothers, and it was a multi-generational family because there were kids working in the business. The brothers had probably a 30-year-long successful career in the restaurant industry, and then they got the brilliant idea they wanted to go into real estate. Well, anybody who knows real estate, it's a very capital-intensive business, right? So in the beginning, you take big risks with millions of dollars put at risk before everything kind of settles out. Well, so they were taking those big risks, building shopping centers, and they had no estate plan whatsoever, including no life insurance. And I kept saying to them, don't you guys think you should have some life insurance in case something happens to one of you, while you're in the middle of all this? And I mean, every time I would bring up the phone, but click, he would not even talk about it. And I became very good friends with them and over time, and one time I just said, why won't you engage? Why? Tell me why. I just have to know. And he goes, oh, it's just their problem. They can deal with it. I mean, it was just literally, he didn't want to think about death. He was your classic American entrepreneurial success story, and he loved to believe he was going to live forever and be invincible. And that was just the end of the story. So luckily, he lived to 90-something, so he never really had to address it when he was younger and taking all the risk. But it is the much better way to go, if you ask me. So anyway, with that, to wet your whistle, I'm going to introduce our panel today. On the far right is Ursula Scroggs. She is a CPA extraordinaire, and she leads the CPA firm DKSS here in Troy. They have two offices, one in St. Clair Shores, one in Troy, and a great local CPA firm with over 30 professionals. And then
we're up to 50 now, but who's counting?
You're up to 50. I was trying to figure it out from your website, and it was not clear. Oh, thank you. And then in the middle is Rob Galbraith with Horizon Bank Wealth Management. Rob is currently a financial planner and financial advisor helping people put together their wealth plans, but he is also sort of a recovering attorney, and later in life became a financial advisor just because he had a passion for the work. And then on the weekends, he actually plays in a band, so he's a multifaceted guy. So sure to be entertaining.
Big fun.
And educational. And then finally we have Kristen Hughes of Schluter and Hughes. She's an estate planning attorney. Kristen is one of those people with a gift for bringing people together. Dedicated to helping families through transitions and challenges, Kristen and her team at Schluter and Hughes Law find solutions. She concentrates her practice in the areas of estate planning, guardianship, and conservatorships, elder law, probate, and trust administration. So with that, we'll get started. Another quote to inspire you. If you fail to plan, you're planning to fail. So with that, I'm turning it over to you, Urs, right?
All right, I'm pretty spontaneous. I want my co-presenters to stand up for 1 second. They don't know what's going on. Come here. Group hug.
Group hug.
I just want you to see us. We promise that you will have a lot of fun today. So just want to say that. I have another quote, too. Who said, "Knowledge speaks, but wisdom listens"? Anybody know? You'll be surprised. Jimi Hendrix. Jimi Hendrix. Knowledge speaks, and wisdom listens. Today we're going to hear about success and succession. We're going to hear about stories mixed in with lessons, and probably a little laughter. We have to have fun here. And of course, we're going to share a lot of best practices with you. In front of you here, we have, I'm pretty sure we're at least 75 plus years of experience helping small and closely. I don't know, Rob, you might have like 50 of those 75. Yeah. Maybe I have that. Share best practices because, you learn what you work, and we learn from our customers and our clients every day. Let's start with the statistics. I think most of you have heard these before, but it's good to hear them again. Ready? Only 30% of family businesses move to the second generation. So out of 100% of family businesses, only 30% go to the second generation. And then another 10% of those go to the third generation. And less than 5% go to the fourth generation. How many first generation businesses do we have here? How about second? Cool. Third? They're arguing over there. All right. Family business argues. That's fine. Any third? Any fourth generations?
We have 1/3.
Yay, right? You work hard to get your business through generations. And let's go to the next slide.
But can I touch on one thing? Who's heard of the shirt sleeves to shirt sleeves kind of curse in here? Does anyone know what that means?
Mm-mm.
Well, they always say from whether it's a business or just transitioning wealth, they say you go from shirt sleeves to shirt sleeves by the third generation. The first generation is really working and trying to build the business, and they get it successful. Second generation kind of puts a suit on like I do. And says, "Hey, thank you, Mom and Dad.
I'm going to college."
Yeah, thanks for all the hard work. We'll take care of this. And then they have kids, right, who now maybe feel a little bit entitled, right, because now everything's super successful. And maybe by the end of that generation, they're back in good old shirt sleeves again. So a funny story, one time I was given a similar presentation to a group of wealthy, if you will, business owners. And I was sitting up here kind of preparing my remarks, and this woman comes up to me. She was real spunky. She says, "Whatever you do, don't talk about the shirt sleeves to shirt sleeves things. We're sick of it." And I went, "Oh boy, this is going to be a tough crowd today." But then I started reflecting on it. I said, maybe we're a little bit too negative, about those second and third generations. Maybe we're just, giving them a little bit too much grief and calling them spoiled brats and all that good stuff. But I think that shirt sleeve curse is legit because these numbers that you just talked about, in my 28 years, they haven't changed.
Yeah.
So it's real, whether it's passing on business, wealth, or it's just other forms of wealth. By that third generation, I've seen it just boom, boom, boom like that. So just interesting. Shirt sleeves to shirt sleeves. So
I'm going to remember that.
I didn't get any grief on saying it here.
Not
so
yet. Not yet. It's going to be after.
Well, it's early.
This next stat, how about this one? 45% of family businesses are expecting to retire in the next 5 years. And they don't have a succession plan. And when we talk about succession plan, I want to talk about a couple things a little later. It's not just succession plan, who is going to inherit my business, buy my business, that kind of thing. But I'm going to intersperse a little disaster recovery too, because sometimes we don't get to choose when we are going to leave this lovely earth. So we'll be talking a little bit about that. Next. How about estate planning? almost 56 million people are over the age of 65 in America. They make up almost 17% of the total U.S. population. So estate planning also becomes very, very important in our talks here today. And how about this one? So we've got all these older, more mature people, right? They make up a big part of the population. However, only 32% of Americans have estate planning documents. I'm not going to make you raise your hand, but you know who you are. And 60% of those those without a will or trust haven't even started the process. You'll hear me say it during your talk because you're talking during my time. So, gift of love is get your stuff together and take care of the next generation and your family. This is a gift of love to make these hard decisions in the future. Why? Why don't we do this, right? We sit with a lot of family businesses over the years. God, we're working so hard in our business, I just don't have the time to deal with this. We work on our business, but we forget to work in our business and forget to work, the other way, we work in our business, but we don't work on our business. You know, we're busy. Somehow we think that it's all going to work out, right? But you have to make the time to do that. Sometimes there's just emotional issues, right? You've got sons and 2 daughters or whatever, and one wants to be in the business, the next one doesn't want to be in the business. They fight over the turkey platter, you know, and it's just the emotions of having to make some tough decisions and having to make them and talk about them with your family. And so I have a story. I was introduced a lot of years ago, and I get to tell this story, to Chester. Chester immigrated here from Poland. He came here with nothing. I'm pretty sure he did not have even a high school diploma. And yet he grew this little chain of paint automotive supply stores throughout Metro Detroit and Ohio, and it grew and it grew. And I met Chester when I was, a long time ago, in my 20s. And of course, he wanted to marry his son off to me, which in retrospect, I probably should have done that because he was very, very wealthy. However, he just was very natural in terms of his thoughts and ideas and things like that. He was this guy, and I'm making the story a little longer than it needs to be because I'm going to refer to it later, but he's this guy that had these counter people that were selling paints, right, and he's paying them $1 an hour or who knows what, and he would fight like crazy for a 10% raise for them, and I'm just like, but every year he put 15% of their pay into a profit sharing plan, every year, and these people never thought they'd see that money, right? I would later go to Christmas parties when you could disclose things, and he would say, "John Smith, come on up here." And he'd have one of those big checks, and those big checks had, "John is one of our millionaires. He's retiring this year, and he's got $1,285,000 in the profit sharing plan." The power of saving, the power of being mindful, right? Our financial people say mindful, and the power of accumulation. He was also the guy that, as he grew the business, his family was in and out. None of them really stuck, with the business. And so maybe he was in his 70s, something like that. He decided to bring somebody from the outside in to run his family business. He was the chairman of the board. We always called him the chairman. And he brought somebody from outside in. And he empowered a group of advisors to come in, and he insisted that there were quarterly meetings, that financial information would be reviewed, et cetera, and it really raised the bar. My other fun thought about Chet was, you talked about insurance. He had like a $10 million policy. And we'd sit there at that board meeting and say, holy crap, what, should we pay that $300,000 premium again? Chet, how long are you going to live? And he said, I took my 100-year pill. And he died at the lovely age of 90 with the place and he had 200 employees with the place intact. Everybody was a little worried about what would happen to that business when he passed. That business thrives today. Family later on sold the business off. They pocketed something like $75 million. It's a lovely story, and it was done. He always said he had two families, his family at home and his family at the business. And so you'll hear a little bit more about Chet, but I just wanted to talk a little bit about the importance of being mindful in doing this. He wasn't well educated, but he was very, very wise. It's all yours, Kristen.
It's very interesting as business owners, right? We plan, we prepare, we have processes, we have procedures, we are dealing with realization and growth and staff and employees and marketing and mission statement. And then we turn to the other side, and that's estate planning. And as Ursula and Rob kind of commented on, it's very interesting. The thought, process, procedure, mission statement, goals, objectives, it's the same, except people put their head in the sand. It's the classic ostrich effect. And why? This may come as a shock to some, or maybe, very common to others. It's psychological. When we are dealing with estate planning, we are talking about two major concepts that are very concerning to us as human beings. One is that we will become incapacitated. We will. It's a matter of fact. And we will not be here on this earth at some point in time. Maybe that's because of a sudden event, or maybe because it's a little bit longer. We got a little bit more of a pathway. So when we take that concept and flip the script and say, whoa, this is the same discussions that we're having on the business, but we're moving it over to the estate planning arena. Why? If we can switch for me. It's important. It's important because I have never in my career have ever had somebody come to me and say, Kristen, I loved the probate process. That was fabulous. I enjoyed the courts. I enjoyed the litigation. I really enjoyed having all of our personal details of what's going on with myself or with my mom or my family member or with the business spread out for
public,
everybody to see. Right? It never happens. We're in probate court all the time. Am I fearful of it? No. Do I think that anybody has come out of it saying that was really fabulous? In law school, I worked for a judge. He was a family, probate, and mental health, right? Kind of all goes together. And he said, Kristen, I've done my job if everybody leaves this courtroom unhappy, right? Oh. There you go. We got a whole crew of individuals that are just not happy. And estate planning takes that, right, the fear. We always start with the fear factor because I think it's important to understand the ramifications that if you don't plan, that's okay. There's a solution. That's the statutes and that's the probate court, right? And it's an amazing thing what happens when you're no longer here to make those decisions or to voice your decisions, how people's resuscitations of what is fair and what is right and what needs to be done goes a little bit chaotic. It ensures that your plan as business owners flows into a parallel universe from you individually to your family members so that you've got these two realms that you've really worked hard for are working in parallel together. One of the other things, and we'll talk a little bit more, is to ensure that you have a doer, not only in your business, but also in your personal, that can step in to be your surrogate decision maker, that knows what they're doing, that has the capacity to do what they're supposed to be doing, and the competency. It's amazing to me how families just go, we're gonna leave it up to chance, right? And chance never works out well. We have a long road to plan and to prepare. Things are gonna change, that's okay, that's the beauty of life. But the more that we can prep and prepare and plan and guide our families and guide our businesses, you're going to see that Thanksgiving dinner moment is ruined, not happen, right? The visual, we're all sitting around the kitchen, the family dinner table, and that one person comes up, clears the table, right? And all the food is on the floor and nobody's speaking to each other ever again. So it's important, it's intentional, and it's really in line with business planning, which is exciting, right? Aren't you guys excited?
Yes.
No? Okay, same.
So, Kristen, just a comment about
Yeah.
chance. Chance costs money later, right? You leave it to chance. This is not the kind of money I like earning, but the accountants and the attorneys make all the money at the end if you do leave everything to chance, because the cost of processing your estate, et cetera, goes up, right? And so don't leave it to chance. We have lots of fun things that are very empowering and encouraging to us to do, and one of the fun things is to administer estates and trusts that actually are there, and that we get to make sure that your wishes are fulfilled. Next.
Next slide. Wonderful. So we talk about estate planning, right? You hear that word being, just lopped around. Well, estate planning is really a combination of many different documents. And the core documents that we're looking at ensure that you have a surrogate decision maker during your lifetime, during your incapacity, and during your death, right? It ensures that you have somebody that's managing the finances, right? And the day-to-day, all the way to the healthcare piece. Now, anybody that's 18 or older needs an estate plan. Why? Because it's that magical age at 18 that you are a legal adult. There's no automatic legal authority that when you turn 18 that a parent or a spouse is able to speak or make decisions for you. So it's interesting, right? So we've got two documents that every person, 18 or older, must have. It's the durable power for financial decisions. This is your everyday document. Think about everything that you do on a daily basis. Now imagine that you can't do that. It is an amazing thing, and almost, the most frustrating thing that, there's big decisions to make and then there's little decisions to make. I'm giving you a story where we have a woman. She's older, she's incapacitated, and they turned off her heat in this frigid air. They're not supposed to do that. That's illegal, especially for an older individual. And she did not have a power of attorney. So the family members picked up the phone and said, turn on her heat. They said, I'm sorry, ma'am, we can't speak to you. Why? Because you have no legal authority to direct us, to dictate that this heat gets turned on. So can we think about just the smallest thing? I just want you to turn on heat. That turns into, now we have to go to court to get a conservatorship to simply have somebody have the legal authority to turn on heat on an elderly person's home. That is a nightmare. That is not instantaneous. So a durable power of attorney is really important. That, and if you guys have kids, that's really important too. They go off to college. Guess what? You have no transparency in anything that they do or the ability to come in and help. 18 is not a maturity age, it's just a legal age. We don't talk much about...
I'm not so sure 30 is a maturity age.
Oh, I've got...
With all due respect, by the way. I'm talking about my son.
I've got 3 teenagers. I mean, I don't know if they can find their socks. That's amazing. But if we go to the healthcare side, we really don't talk a lot about healthcare. I love a good discussion about assets and titling and financial planning and making sure that we are not paying more taxes, that we are fully funded, right? But what happens, COVID really highlighted this for everybody, that the healthcare system is kind of broken, right? We either have too much information or not enough information. Nobody's talking to anybody. I'm going to tell you that the worst thing that we experienced during COVID was families calling us and saying, we can't do anything to help our loved one because they can't make a decision as it relates to their healthcare needs. Completely different section of the law, completely different capacities. And it caused a lot of chaos. It caused a lot of inability to move forward, and a lot of people died in not a very pleasant way. It was a traumatic way. And so it's important as we talk through estate planning, as we talk about business succession, as we talk about family succession, that you're really understanding the importance of talking about the you. What would happen if you needed somebody to jump in from a healthcare perspective? Now, the other two, it's really important to know the durable power of attorney and the patient advocate go away when you pass away, right? They're attached to the humans. They go away. The other two documents are pretty fabulous because the revocable trust, which is my favorite, is there during your lifetime, during your incapacity, and after you pass away. Now, I don't know if you remember the books, the Choose Your Own Adventure books in the 1980s. They were fabulous, right? The first couple of chapters told the setting, the characters and the plot line. And the reader had the ability to go to page 72 for Adventure A and page 75 for Adventure B. That's your trust. Amazing. You have the ability to direct the who, what, when, where, why of your life, right? And that plays into your business, your family, your wants, your wishes, and the person, right, the trustee, the person holding the purse, which is the trust, to be the doer. That is extremely important. And then the last will and testament. This is interesting, is that people think that if you have a last will and testament, that's all you need. And you go to the bank and you say, here it is, I have my last will and testament. And the bank says, oh, that's wonderful and fabulous. Go to probate court, right? And so probate court, yet again, is either, nobody's ever said that was fun, Kristen, but it's a process, it's a procedure, it's expensive, and it's not painless. So the documents together, it's not a one-size-fits-all. They're very intentional. The information that's in every single document, it's not one of those things where you can say, I have a power of attorney. The document dictates what powers that the individual has. We had a situation where the bank refused to comply with a valid power of attorney because it didn't specifically say that the agent had the ability to change the password.
Oh my.
Wait, that wasn't our bank.
No, it was in your bank. It's not their bank.
For the record.
No. And, right, that doesn't seem logical. But it didn't have the power in it. So their bank legal representative said, I'm sorry, you don't have the power to do it. Go to probate court. Frustrating, right? And now in these digital ages, everything's online. If we can't reset a password, how are we getting this information? All right, on to the next slide. As we talk through a little bit more advanced planning, there are some fabulous things that we can do, especially as business owners, right? Business owners, we have an inherent liability. We try to protect our personal assets from the business assets. And there's mechanisms to do it. It's not one size fits all. There's irrevocable trusts, there's family entities, and here's something that has been more and more being dialogued about is pre- and post-nuptial agreements. This is important. Why? So I have a partner in my law firm. I get along with her great. We are great business partners. I did not go into partnership with her husband. Same thing, did not go into partnership with my husband. He's in cybersecurity. He would never know what to do, right, with a law firm. How awful, right? And so what if we get divorced? We have seen time and time again where divorces, not only of the partnership, but of the second generation owners and the third generation owners, where all of a sudden we're bringing in a new catalyst of destruction, and that is divorce. Nobody acts well in divorce. I don't know. I've never seen a divorce that goes well with everybody holding hands and walking out the door without cards.
I have a husband that we hold hands still. Husband, good terminology. Go ahead.
I like that.
So it's important. It is important that, yes, I know that people have strong feelings about prenuptial and postnuptial agreements. We want the marriage to stay in, but it's important as business owners that we are protecting this asset, and one of the greatest ways to protect this asset is making sure that our significant others are not going to come in and have it be part of a divorce proceeding, and then it you see that those businesses are disbanded and all the wonderful work that happens, sometimes it even goes bankrupt, which is not the best case scenario. Now, recovering attorney.
Yes.
In your experience.
Before, I just want one of your points, Kristen, is that you mentioned that it's important to make sure that your children have their durable power of attorney and patient advocate form. I'm just back to this gift of love. Have your stuff put together for your family, but I'm a big believer that make sure that your own children have their wills and trusts done also, because they may inherit from you. And we're not. And in this case, I'm not talking just about the 18-year-olds. I'm talking about 25 or 40-year-olds. Gift of love, for God's sakes, just pay it forward and pay to get it done for them, and say Merry Christmas. Okay, sorry.
No, we're good. You can go ahead and click the next slide if you don't mind. Yeah, before I kind of get into this, just a couple of comments on some of the stats we talked a little bit about. When we say that 30% of Americans do have an estate plan, that's pretty good. But I would suggest that of those 30%, maybe 50% or more are in the wrong estate plan. Yeah. Because think about it, when you first set up an estate plan, it's usually because you're married and you have minor kids and you're going on a trip together. And either the wife or the husband's nagging each other going, hey, whatever we do, we got to get something in place, because if this goes down, unfortunately we just saw this morning, right?
Yeah.
Tragic incident in Washington, D.C. Who's going to be the guardian of our children and the conservator? And so they do it. You do it then, right, when you're young, and then you kind of set it aside, and and this little thing called life happens, and you gather wealth, and you hopefully you do well and you're successful, and your life changes and your financial position changes, but your estate plan is still sitting there gathering dust. And maybe even the people that you've appointed as guardians for your kids, now you don't want them anymore to be in that position, because maybe cousin Eddie's up doing a 13-year stint in Riker Island or something now, and maybe you've moved, and it would be crazy to have my brother who lives in Texas now to be the guardian. So people really, even if you have an estate plan, it's always a good idea to let's update it, because things have changed, right? You've got a 401k plan at work that you didn't have now. Who are you going to name as a beneficiary on that?
How often should somebody be looking at their estate plan?
3 to 5 years, right? Probably. Chris and I used to always say, in private practice, at least update your powers of attorney every 5 to 7 years, just because when you present that to a bank, you want it to be kind of up-to-date document. The laws have changed recently on that anyway. You don't want it to be all kind of yellow and coffee stained and present it to a bank, because then we're not really sure, is that still the
Is this your newest one?
Yeah, is this still your wishes? But yeah, it's always a great idea to update it every 3 to 5 years, or a major life event. You get a new job, you move, hey, did you put your new house in the name of the trust that you established? Those type of things. But people just don't do it, right? And it's the number one, I would say the number one reason people don't do it is the P word, procrastination, okay? And then why do they procrastinate? Well, because we're going to ask the tough questions that maybe they garble about amongst each other, and they're anxious about that. And we just had this week, we had a coach from Franklin Templeton, right, that came in and gave us a little presentation. It was really kind of directed to some of our younger advisors on how to conduct relationship reviews with the client. What are some things that you might want to make sure you cover? And one thing that's, I always get a nugget or two from every seminar I go to that I can take with me, and I hope maybe you guys get one too. Shirt sleeves to shirt sleeves, for example. But he mentioned, he said, do you realize, guys, that when people go to see their financial advisor or wealth management advisor, they have the same stress level as if they're going to see their primary care physician. And I was like, wow, gosh, I guess I didn't realize that. But then I went, wait, I just went and saw my doc 2 weeks ago and for my annual physical, and he's a friend of mine. And every time I'm in the office, my blood pressure is crazy. It's like, it's high because I have the white coat effect, right? I'm just nervous, I'm a little bit anxious, and I thought, you know what, I'm gonna kind of remember that, you know, because we just take it for granted. Hey, coming on in, visiting us.
Yeah, it's every day for us.
Yeah,
right?
exactly, right? It's what we do, you know, but I'm gonna take that into my practice. Go, how do I make it a little more comfortable in that opening remarks that I say to them to kind of ease their pain a little bit. So I just thought that was interesting. So those are just my little couple takes on some of the things we just talked about. So now you've got all this great plan in place now, and you're saying, okay, well, who's going to kind of run the gig? Who's going to do the show after I'm gone, right? Is it going to be, and you probably get this a lot, Kristen, I'm sure. It's like, well, you know, I want to name Jimmy because he's the oldest child, and he'll take care of it. He can be our successor trustee, and you know, I'm sure he'll do a great job, even though he lives across the country, right? And Jimmy's in his prime earning years, and he's got 3 teenagers, and he's a little bit busy right now. And my first question I always ask the client is, do the kids get along? You know, do they all get along? And if there's any pause in their answer, the answer is no, okay? If they say, well, you know, for the most part, they do. And you're like, okay, here. And for me, that's just an internal red flag because you want to dig a little bit deeper on that. Because I can tell you, and I've threatened to write a book just called Greed, when I'm done with all this stuff. The moment something happens to mom and dad, okay, with those kids that, well, they kind of get along, when mom and dad are both gone, all of these, what I call Dr. Phil issues, come to the surface that they've been brewing for a long time. He liked you better. You know, you got this, I got that. You know, sometimes we've seen a child just go and raid the house and take stuff out.
Got to go lock the house when something happens.
Yeah, and the next thing you know, you're filing a motion to cease and desist on all that good stuff. But it's really important that you address that issue in your own estate planning documents. Do you really want a family member handling all this? Okay. First of all, would they know what to do? Like if somebody passed away today, we know what to do up here pretty easily, and probably many of you, but there's a lot of duties that come with being named as a trustee or a personal representative, okay? And sometimes, you know, you're just not equipped to do it. And I can't tell you how many lawsuits we filed for a surcharge against a trustee that they breached a fiduciary duty. It's super easy to breach that because you can go ahead and click the slide if you'd like to. Because if you're not really sure exactly, you know, what you're doing, you can get in trouble pretty quickly. So I used to always name a corporate or third-party trustee in every trust that I drafted. Now, it wouldn't always be the first person that would take over, but I would try to talk to the client and say, okay, Jimmy's going to go ahead, you know, we want Jimmy to be the successor trustee. He's the oldest, and he kind of gets along with his younger sister, you know, a little bit. I would say, you know what we're going to do? Why don't we name Horizon Private Wealth Management as a co-trustee with Jimmy? You know, just in case, you know. We can work with Jimmy. You know, banks typically don't die. We typically don't go out of business. And we really don't care what the beneficiaries think when we're named as the trustee, because we look at the 4 corners of the document and say, what did the grantor, what did the person who died, person who set up the trust, what were his or her wishes? And we look at that intent and go, okay, we got to carry these out now. right? So there's a number of other duties too that.
Can I interject for one
Sure,
second?
absolutely.
So remember my friend Chet that died at 90 or whatever? He named 3 trustees to start with, first line, and it was myself, his attorney, and a family member.
Yep.
Because he wanted the family member to make sure that the family stuff was there. But the next in line, if any one of us stepped backwards, it was a corporate trustee. So if any of us said, I don't want to do it, a corporate trustee came in as that third. So
Exactly, and those really are the smoothest transitions, if you will, when somebody passes away.
And if you think about it, jumping in, because we always get to see the best of people, right? When things are
Yeah.
going really well. And it's really interesting when we talk about business owners, right? Like life is hard anyway. It's like the business of incapacity and death. Like that's challenging just in and of itself. Then we have the business and we have the decision maker, which is you, no longer able to make decisions. And then all of a sudden we have the wrong people in, right, to be your decision-making surrogate, not only for you personally, but for your business. It is an amazing and expensive endeavor to get to a place where, right, as my judge said when I was in law school, everybody leaves unhappy, right? Like it's an Oprah moment, not in a positive way because you don't leave with a car, you leave with a bag of emotional, baggage. So there's a lot of estate planning risks that are very specific to business owners that it's very much so encouraged to ensure that you are not putting somebody in place that doesn't have the skill set, that doesn't, maybe they have the skill set, but they don't want to do it, or
Right.
you're putting people in that can't work together, right? When you go into a business with somebody, you're partnering with them. Why? Because you can work well with them. There have been many, many situations that we bring in surrogate decision makers, and there is a conflict, sometimes reasonable, sometimes unreasonable. And that conflict, you can't even get past to the management because we're just battling, right? So
very good point. Very good point.
No, my corporate law law professor in law school once said, choose business partners are very much like a marriage partner. Choose them very wisely. And and when stuff hits the fan, and especially after death, it can get super messy. So anyway, so yeah, I mean, the pros of naming a corporate fiduciary are many. We can step right in. Typically we have a relationship with the client before the bad stuff happens. I'll give you a great example. A former partner of mine in my former law firm called me last week and said, "Hey Rob, we've named you, Horizon Private Wealth Management, as a successor trustee for this client of ours." So I'm like, that's great, right? I don't want the first time I meet with the client, if it's a husband and wife, if a husband dies, the first time I meet is after his death, meet the wife. I don't want, if they both go down and get hit by the beer truck, I don't want to, first time we meet with them is, meet with their children is after something bad has happened. So we like to meet with the clients first, the business owners first, get to know them, start working with them now, right?
Sure, get the feel of what they really want to have happen.
Right, exactly.
Have it here, but also have that feel.
And then get to know G2, the next generation. I think advisors, a lot of time, we overlook that and how important that is.
Yeah.
Because if you get to know the next generation before they actually take over a business or they're actually in or they're actually going to receive an inheritance, they're more likely to continue to work with you, okay? I think there's some stat that like 70% of widows will change their financial advisor, or the non-financial spouse will change their financial advisor after somebody's death because they didn't know the person. They didn't know whoever they were working with.
Yeah.
Now,
Okay.
Go ahead.
It's 9:40 panel, and we were going to leave time for question and answers, so I think we're going a little longer than we had planned.
Sure.
We
I can
like
wrap
our
up.
stories. Go ahead.
I know.
Well, okay. What are the cons of naming a third-party trustee? Well, we got to keep the lights on in the building, right? There's fees associated with all of that, and all that good stuff. But you can carry on.
So, succession planning. Forgive me, I'm sitting on top of my favorite book. It's called Succession, the Final Test of Greatness, right? We work hard all of our lives, right? But could it be meaningless because you didn't take the steps of making sure that your business, if you are not around, is protected? Great book. You can come look at it. I'm sure you can find it on Amazon. So it's so important. So when we talk about key issues, succession planning for your business, gosh almighty, you should know what your business is worth. Huh? I venture to guess that if you are a business owner, chances are good that your largest asset could very well be your business. And when you're doing estate planning, when you are doing documents, if you're evaluating whether you need insurance, we need to know what it's worth. We do business valuations, and a good practice for business owners and all people everywhere is to have a balance sheet done annually so that you can see what your net worth is all the time, and that balance sheet becomes your guideline as to, is everything funded in my trust? Succession planning, and I would say / disaster recovery requires a plan, right? And even prior to that plan, you have to make sure that your business has an operating agreement, right? That it has buy-sell agreements in place if you have partners, because that's going to be a guideline for whoever's going to be your trustees in your estate. All of this really is just to make sure that you've worked so hard that your business, if you're gone, doesn't go to fire sale. Your competitors, if something happens to you, sometimes chomp at the bits to see if, my gosh, Ursula's gone, we can go tap on all those clients, et cetera. So it's an insurance for that. Plan execution, you've got to have a business plan. I suggest that you have an annual business review with your professional advisors. Harness the power of what I'm going to call competitive tension. And I know that sounds really scary and awful, but competitive tension is putting your professional advisors in a room with you. Put some pizza on the table. You might get an hour for free for me if you put pizza on the table. We sit together, and be brave. It's kind of like an annual business review of yourself. It's kind of like your own report card. So I will just tell you that if and when, because it's a when Kristen, and I'm in the room with her, says something brilliant, I promise you, holy crap, the game is going, the bar is raised, and all of us as professional advisors will bring our brilliance to the table. You don't have to be worried about, gee, first I'm going to tell Rob, and then I'm going to tell Ursula, then I'm going to tell Kristen. We're in the room together. And then there's a little accountability that happens. Did everybody do their funding of their trust? What's your goals for next year? What happens if you drop dead? Who's going to run your business? Tough questions are asked at those meetings. Competitive tension is a wonderful thing. Wonderful thing.
I love that term.
Competitive tension. I talked a little bit about professional advisors. That team of people is going to be your attorney, your wealth manager, your risk manager, your insurance people, right? Certainly your accountants, banker. Bring them in the room. You will get the best of what everybody has to give. Plus, we get to know each other to take care of you and your business in the future. Transition. Chet, I told you, when he passed away, everybody cried. The staff in that business, he had 200 employees. They always thought, oh God, when Chet goes, what's going to happen? My job's going to be gone, etc. Having the right people in place to carry your business on, that business did better when he was gone. Reason being is because when you own the business, you do favorites for your favorite customers and stuff like that. It really went to even a more structured business environment. And it was quite amazing, quite amazing. You do this, God forbid, you do not want Uncle Sam to be the biggest beneficiary of your estate. We recognize that, the estate levels, you can pass away with how much? Kristen?
13.99.
$13.99 million today, scheduled to go down to somewhere around 6 or 7 at December of 2025. You want your money to go to your people, your family, your stakeholders, not so much Uncle Sam, right? We would
My
agree.
favorite line is the estate tax is the only voluntary tax. You can do something about it, right?
Oh, I like that. I like that. And
And when
certainly,
you have a business and all of your value in your estate is your business, when there is a tax due, the IRS says, pay it. And if you don't have liquidity to pay that tax due, it's a big hit on your business. It's a big hit on your business.
yeah, when we talk about family harmony, back to Chet, he brought his kids in, and we talked about this is what's going to happen. I don't know if there's a legal term to this, but he also mentioned, because he had the trustees there and he had his 4 children there, he also put into his wills and trusts that, and if anybody complains or challenges my wishes and my estates and trust, you're out.
That's called the terror clause.
The terror clause. I call it the kill pill. And nobody challenged. And there were a few of them that might have as a result. And so family harmony. Everybody got what he wanted them to get, etc. Did you have fun?
Yes.
Did you have fun? Did we learn anything?
Yes.
Yay. Janet, it's yours.
So what questions do you have? Oh, we have 3 hands up, so Dimitri first.
From what you observed, what's the average age of people that do at least a basic level of estate planning?
18.
So the question is, what is the average age? 18?
18.
Is that the reality age or the theory age?
Yeah.
It is
The suggested age.
Suggested age, but I'm going to tell you, a lot of parents and a lot of business owner parents are getting their kids in at 18. Why? Because we are grooming our kids to understand the complexities of estate planning. So if we start at 18, it's so much better than 45, right? So yes, 18 is the magic number.
And just to comment on that, 18 is important too. You mentioned about college. My wife heads up the accounts receivables and billing at Michigan State University. And so what's interesting is a lot of times they'll get calls from parents for their student, their new freshman student that says, hey, I need to find out how much do I owe or this, or can I get a copy of the grades, or how's she doing? And they're like, dude, no.
Yeah.
You don't have.
You may be
the
paying for
rights.
college, but you don't get to
right.
hear the results.
Isn't that crazy? You're paying for it, but you don't have the right to. So having a power of attorney, that says, my daughters thought I was crazy when I made them do this, right? Like, what am I doing, Dad? Well, just sign this right here so we can go ahead. So now we can do that, but that's super important.
Dan?
What's the process for if a corporate trustee is brought in during a will where somebody steps away from the process? How's the corporate trustee notified, or how are the other parties notified that somebody's passed or something like that?
So if a corporate trustee is brought in, what's the process for notifying?
Yeah, like how
The
do they
family?
find out? Is that something that's written into the paperwork, or is that?
Good question.
Yeah. Do you want me to handle this one?
Is it
Oh,
written into the
okay.
paperwork?
Yeah, typically, when somebody passes away and we're appointed a successor trustee, that doesn't mean we're going to do it, right? We have to kind of take a peek at what we're getting involved with. We've got a whole trustee committee that we look at. If some of the assets that we're asked to manage are gas stations that have been closed for 30 years or sitting on environmental tanks and stuff like that, we're probably not going to do that. But assuming we say, yeah, we want to do it, we accept the role. We have to file a formal acceptance, and then we have to notify the beneficiaries of their interest in the trust.
Is this before, when the trust is first established that you have to notify the beneficiaries,
No.
or when you step in as trustee?
Yeah, we don't do anything
Right.
until whatever the document that Kristen drafts says, either at their incapacity or upon their death. So when we're appointed, we're just kind of sitting there going, hey, cool, we're here. You know, in case something happens. But again, in my world, I like to get to know the client, you know, before we're actually doing anything, you know, performing our duties. But yeah, if we're appointed, we're just sitting there. When we start kicking in is when we're triggered in the document, either, and it's typically when somebody becomes incapacitated, and that means definition, whatever it is in the governing document, or upon death. Then obviously if we accept the role, we're going to kick it in. But yeah.
Thank you.
Great question, though.
Thank you. Gentleman in the back.
Was Chester his Polish name or his English name?
You know what? I don't know. I always knew him as Chester.
I don't think it was his Polish name.
Probably not. Probably not.
So a comment about incapacity, you can define incapacity, which is interesting, right? So especially from a financial standpoint, it's a different capacity. Being able to make decisions for financial versus healthcare is completely different. But from a financial standpoint, you guys, the world is your oyster. You can have one doctor. You can have two doctors. It must be a primary care physician if you even have a primary care physician. I've seen disability panels, right, where it's the spouse and maybe some family members. I mean, I wouldn't recommend it for every single family, but one size does not fit all. So it's important to think about that. When, with every action, there's a reaction. With everything that we do, there is a trigger.
Yeah, and sometimes the person who is the trustee on their own trust during their lifetime, right? They get just maybe too old, or they don't want to deal with it anymore, and they say, I don't want to do this anymore. I've got it going on in my own family. My father-in-law is getting to the point now where he's a trustee on his trust, but I wouldn't be surprised, I don't push it, but I wouldn't be surprised in the next year he just says, I don't want to do this. Why don't you guys just kind of handle this? We're managing all of his assets anyway, right? So you can, if you're a trustee of your own trust, you could just say, I resign. I don't want to do it anymore. Horizon, do you guys want to pick it up? Sure. Okay.
That's great. Sir?
Is there a checklist of things to do if you're a trustee?
A checklist?
Something I could find online or something else?
Well, yeah, I'm
For
sure.
sure.
There's
For
yeah,
sure.
Absolutely, yeah.
Can you recommend one?
So
Oh,
when you
Check
talking
after.
about trustee, yes. When
Yes,
you're
sir.
talking about a trustee, it's a big job. Hindsight is 20/20. The probate courts are filled with people that thought that they were doing a good job, but then didn't do a good job, and the probate court goes, "You accepted this role." So when we talk about the checklist, it's statutory and it's baked into the document itself. So I caution a little bit because it's not a one-size-fits-all. But Rob touched on it. It's the duty. You have to know everything, right? You have to know taxes, insurance, the beneficiaries, distributions, business assets, the flow, the if-then scenario set.
Or engage a professional that
To
knows.
be able to do it. You can be the quarterback. So I caution you, go look. It gets a little bit overwhelming, but when the plan is in place, that's your choose your own adventure book. That's the guideline, that's the duty, that's the direction.
You know what? I've had clients that have hundreds of millions of dollars in assets pass away. All of their paperwork is great. It took less time to administer that estate than a $1 million estate where nothing was in writing.
and Kristen and I are working on a case right now that is super goofy where they appointed not a very good person to be a PR, if you will, personal representative. And it's taken at least 4 years when it should have been something
Oh,
really
wow.
simple because there's just not the right person doing their job on this. I wouldn't be surprised if there's a little bit of
Got
Thank
a
pushback.
you,
question
sir.
there?
Any advice on picking a trustee or vetting them?
Is there, I'm just repeating, are any tips or advice on picking the right trustees?
You want me to handle that one too? Sure. Yeah, I think what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to meet with the team. Okay, your attorney at your meeting with your attorney, when you're talking about, okay, how do I want my estate plan to be structured? How do I want this? Who do I want to do that? They might recommend a corporate trustee, and they'll give you a couple of names, okay? Or might, depending on, you know, each one of us, our groups has a certain niche that we really are really good at. Some trust companies or corporate fiduciaries, they won't take a case if it's under, you know, $2 million or something like that. Okay, we do. And we also kind of specialize in those special needs trusts. If you've got a child or a family member with special needs, my goodness, please get your estate planning done right away. And Kristen will hook you up on a cool special needs trust that we would probably serve as trustee. And that's super important because we want to make sure we're not making any distributions to the child that will kick them off of government benefits, right? And you can do that like that if you don't know what you're doing. But yeah, I would interview the different companies.
And it's in the words, right? You've got to have somebody that you trust.
Yeah.
You mentioned
Great point.
they've got to have time. I mean, sometimes administering wills and trusts can be like a full-time job. So they've got to have time to do it. They've got to have wherewithal to choose good professional advisors
Yep.
to get it pulled together. And again, sometimes we see it's a family member and a professional.
Yeah.
Yes, Shannon?
So if Horizon is named as a trustee, I was listening to you earlier, it sounded like when somebody dies, then you may not accept that role, is that correct?
Correct.
Just
So-
because you're named, so if you're the only named one in the estate and you don't accept that, then what happens to that estate?
I'm just going to repeat the question.
Yeah,
for
go
the-
ahead, Jen. I was gonna.
She's asking if Horizon is named as the only trustee and we choose not to accept the role, what would happen in that instance?
So I'm going to jump in
You
real
take
quick.
that one.
So the wonderful thing about pre-planning is that you have that discussion before you name the person, for which then you spend all the money to get them into the document. There are many times we have family members that are like, I'm just going to put this entity or this person in without having a pre-conversation with them. So that's something important because you want to make sure that the person that you're pairing to do the job has the skill set to do it.
And
right?
that they know. You know, it should not be a shock if I'm named as a
Absolutely.
trustee. I would hate that.
100%. And it's business owners, every business is a little bit of a niche, and you want to make sure that the trustee knows your business, right? Especially if it's going to be held in trust for, you know, your business interest, right? Held in trust for maybe multiple generations. So it's the dialogue, the discussion, the pre-planning is going to avoid the what if scenario. Now, let's just say worst case scenario, all the trustees go, no way, no how. Trusts have an amazing thing where it says, well, godly, gee, if there is a default, you know, nobody's picking up the role of a trustee. Many trusts, if they're good trusts, say, well, what is the process and procedure to be able to get somebody in without court involvement?
Right.
Probate courts have been filled with just administrative tasks, like nobody wants to be the trustee. Well, the laws have changed over the years that allow for the grantor themselves to put that process in place. It's very fun, it's very fantastic, and it avoids probate court.
So we're going to be here after if you want to have some individual questions or whatever, because Jan's given me a snake eye over there. We got to get done. I know what snake eye looks like. We have a raffle, but talk about our report card.
Yes, so in your package, there's a one-page report card that we prepared for you to be able to do some self-assessment. You don't have to fill it out now. It's really designed for you to take away and do some reflection and try to figure out where do I start. So that is the goal. Did I cover that? Is there anything else?
I think, just take it, look at it, grade yourself.
We also have some prizes, raffle prizes, so if you got a ticket, great. If you didn't get a ticket, we can hand you one now.
Everybody have a raffle ticket?
Everyone has one. Nobody's crying. Okay.
Just pull.
I take it we're not eligible to win.
Hey, our prize is just the pleasure of being here.
Okay, 450044.
You don't get a prize. You might want to grab the prize too, and then, or maybe get some help.
All right, 450065.
Joe. Be sure to report that to compliance. And
Yeah, you'll get a 1099.
I don't think it's worth 600, is it?
Oh no, it's a wisdom basket. Could be worth millions.
56.
Repeat that?
450056.
Oh, that's me.
Who won this one? Yay!
All right, 450061.
Oh,
Yay.
there we go, gentleman in the front.
Are we giving the Stanley?
Yeah, they're,
Yeah.
they're, I just didn't wrap them. They're brand new, so. It's to keep you healthy and hydrated. Lots of water.
450058.
That's mine.
Yeah.
Hey, another one?
Yep. One more.
450067.
me too.
One more? One more.
One more.
Okay. 450063.
Yay.
There's a reason why she is so slim and trim. I have her do this all the time. Climbing stairs and all kinds of fun stuff.
All right. Well, thank you all for coming. Feel free to stay down and ask questions. And if you have to be on your way, drive safely. Thank you.
Thank you so much.